We are heading towards an era where people will not know more about politics and economics will know less.
We have this cascading series of effects in which we're never really allowed to give people the opportunity to figure out what's true or how they're wrong because we don't have a clash of ideas, and we've lost that. And it seems so fundamental, so constitutive of what makes a society move forward. The very people who were at the back end of the culture war 5 years ago, once they see themselves now winning and woke declining, they're picking up a lot of these tactics as well. I do see problematic trends emerging, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about them. I think we've lost some basics of liberalism.
I think that should give us courage, exposure to other people's perspectives.
It's moving us in a good direction. So, do you consider yourself someone on the left?
No, I consider myself more of a radical centrist, in the sense that I embrace some liberal ideas. Mostly, I'm closest, I think, to being a liberal, but liberal in the continental European sense. That it's liberal is, let's say, the third pole of democratic ideologies, and you have conservatism and the left, which is social democracy. So the liberalism in Europe is somewhere in between. I mean, it's the center, I think, in the United States. And I know that everyone defines themselves in the center, so it sounds rather cheap. But I embrace some leftist ideas as well. I believe, for example, in the solidarity of the state, and it can work well in some countries like the Scandinavian countries. I definitely think, I believe in conservative minimums as well. I think we should have nation states. I think nation states have their history and have their heritage, which has to be especially culturally supported. But also I really believe in liberal minimums, which is like the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and also a healthy level of individualism.
Okay. So maybe you can shed some insight on this, because I've been thinking about this for a while. So just this morning, Konstantin Kisin, a friend of mine, tweeted out, he has this very, very successful show with Francis Foster, Trigonometry, and he tweeted out, we just cannot get people on the left on the show. We just cannot get them on. And I have, and then Andrew Gold, who's another friend of mine, it's a small community, we all know each other. He kind of said he has the same problem. I have had the same problem. You just do not know how much time and effort and resources we put into trying to get people on the left. They will not show up. They will not.
Why? What do they say?
Well, I was going to ask you why you thought that would. Why do you think they won't talk? I mean, I have no problem. I could get anybody on the right in here, and that's no problem. And I could pretend to be a leftist, or pretend to be a progressive, or pretend to be woke, push back. I don't know why, and I'm wondering if you do from a European perspective, because I can't figure it out for a lot.
Because the skeptical movement, it has its, I would not say leftist, but materialist roots, right? Yeah. And based on enlightenment. So I really believe in the power of conversations. Honestly, in Hungary, I'm more, regarded to be a lefty by people on the governmental side, for the simple reason that anyone who is not, pro-governmental and waving the Fidesz flag, so is regarded to be lefty. I'm not. I don't think so. And I have many debates with real leftists in Hungary. Not that as if they were. It was a huge camp. In Hungary, for example, I think you have all the dilemma of that, okay, you want to go out and talk, you want to discuss. And still, at my think tank, Political Capital Institute, and its public events, and its summer university as well, always try to invite pro-governmental speakers as well. Sometimes
do they come?
Sometimes they do. We just had a good experience about that recently at our summer university when we could have a high-level governmental speaker. And I think it created some controversy. I mean, participants of our summer university have raised him, I think, sharp questions, but and also sometimes...
What was the controversy? They didn't want him there? Hey, did you know only half of you watching are subscribed? If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button to keep the videos coming. Thanks.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was not a question. It was not a question. And I think that's the thing. So it's not always easy, to have conversations with some people. And I'm picky when it comes to Hungary as well. You have people in Hungary very vocal in the public discussions who are just repeating Kremlin lies, for example, about that people were not killed in Bucha, and there was no crimes against humanity committed by Russia, which is a well-documented fact. Exactly. And it's like, if the United Nations, if OSCE, if the Council of Europe, political bodies that Russia is a member of, have all reported that there were crimes against humanity there, and you just ignore it. I think it's insane and it's inhuman. So I reject going into shows and discussions where I feel that the moral distance in fundamental issues are so broad that it cannot be bridged, and we shouldn't even try because it will just get personal. And you don't have to expose yourself, I think, to an experience that you utterly dislike. But at the same time, I think if politics goes totally tribal, and also we received our criticism for, inviting governmental speakers. Okay, so there is the way of tribalism in Hungary. If you go into that, I think it's just like it creates a very... It does bad for your intellectual level as well. It will just deprive you of the ability of having discussions and debates.
Explain to me, what was the controversy for inviting a governmental speaker?
No, the controversy was not about inviting a governmental speaker. We received some criticism. It's like that, because it's morally unacceptable.
Why shouldn't you talk to him? Why shouldn't he be grilled or questioned or debated?
Yeah, I think there are. So we invited.
Everybody should be
so
debated, questioned, or challenged.
I don't want to, role play our critics here, but also I think that if we are honest, there is, in an environment, I don't want to talk too much about Hungary because it's maybe something that not that interesting for the viewers and listeners. But, in a country where the government is on power for 15 years, it allocates most of the resources in a highly ideological way and following a pattern that also it has a, huge antagonism towards liberals in general. And also you can feel it in public discourse. There was an attempt to ban the Pride march in Budapest, which finally resulted in the biggest ever march. There was more than 200,000 people, but I think it was a highly oppressive move. So in short, I just want to say that, there are, when you experience to a certain extent some kind of oppression for 15 years, and I don't want to victimize myself, but it's like, I know friends who lost many of their jobs in the media, some who lost their jobs in the universities and so on. Then you can elaborate a mindset that makes you hostile towards conversations that try to bridge these ideological lines. I'm not there, and I still believe in the debates, but again, I'm also rejecting some invitations because of the fact that if the moral distance is too big with a certain players, then it's no good. I think what we have to be very consistent about is that not everyone thinks the same way in the camp that we are not the members of. So we have to sustain our ability to differentiate between different people. And maybe you go to debate with someone, but you don't go to debate with someone else, and it's your personal decision.
Two things. one, every reason that you gave, a certain party's been in power and we don't like the moral distance, all of those things seem to me like more reasons that you'd want to debate them, right? I mean, if somebody has ideas I disagree with, particularly if they have a position of power, why shouldn't they be grilled? Why shouldn't people ask them questions? They should be able to defend their policies.
Yeah, I think, in Hungary,
not even in Hungary, like anywhere,
you're right, but I think we are generally increasingly deprived of basic information about why decisions are made. We are heading towards an era where people will not know more about politics and economics will know less.
Yeah,
and
that's more reason, though, to debate them.
That's why I'm saying that if you have the opportunity to talk to people on power, if you
ask hard questions,
ask hard questions, then you have to live with this opportunity. Yeah, I think I'm just reversing, and I do not want to make an equivalence with of the Hungarian government with, let's say, the Russian Federation.
Right.
I think recently there was a government in some governmental newspapers and a big interview with Sergei Lavrov. I think if you make interviews with Sergei Lavrov but you don't make interviews, for example, with the British foreign minister the minister of the alliance system that we are a member of, then I think it creates an asymmetry that is unhealthy. And I
agree with.
I think authoritarian states can abuse their presence practically at any event.
I completely
agree. But again, at this point as well, I'm saying that as someone who has not been the most loud advocate of the Hungarian government of policies in the last few years, I'm saying that we have to be nuanced about how we define the Hungarian regime. That is definitely not a full-scale dictatorship.
Yeah, so a few things there. I think Tucker Carlson, he just did this big controversial Iranian interview. He should absolutely interview a prominent dissident. He did not. He has not yet. Let me just put it that way.
Exactly.
I think he should. I think it's incumbent upon him too.
Yeah, that's the right point. If you can interview, I think, Vladimir Putin, but then let's put
100%.
Let's
put
balance
Gary
it out.
Kasparov or someone on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's very good.
And someone who's prominent too, not a random person. Okay. So the second thing is, so somebody on the right has invited you to speak and you've said no?
Yes.
Okay, you don't need to name names, but why did you say no? Why did you say no? I would have thought you would have you in particular would have loved that opportunity.
No. Originally I said yes.
Okay.
But then there was an article of the person that I was invited to talk to, and she was just as I said, questioning the issue of the Bucha massacre. Is it and the argument was that it either did not happen, or practically did not happen, but still it was committed by the Ukrainians themselves. So I think it was logically was also a bit flawed and morally totally unacceptable. And honestly, at that point, I felt that I don't want to sit down with the Holocaust relativizer. I also don't want to sit down with someone who is questioning the pure facts for reasons to, whitewash the Russian regime that I think just shouldn't be and cannot be whitewashed. So I felt at that point that I do not want to be on that conversation. I think, I'm a great fan. Maybe I don't think he listens, but I'm a great fan of Jonathan Haidt's works, The Righteous Mind, and his basic argument. And
awesome
I think,
book.
It's awesome book. I like his latest book as well, which is a totally different topic, The Anxious Generation. But it's like when it comes to political ideologies, his main argument is that, finally, you have a set of responses, values that are becoming practically to a certain extent visceral, in the sense that you feel when someone very much transgresses your core values. And I don't think that conversations and debates are beyond every other, or should be above beyond every other principle. So I think if you just feel you fundamentally disagree with an argument, maybe that debate won't bring about any good. Some people like it. I'm not someone who I don't love debates that much. I like civilized debates. So I don't like personal debates. And if you choose people that you are in bad terms with, then it rather becomes personal. And then I don't think it brings about any good. So sometimes non-debate is better than debate.
Yeah. So I think there are two things going on here. One is if somebody has super specific knowledge, like COVID, there's no way I could talk to them. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a physician. I just don't even I'm just not capable. So it's not a question of a debate, or not even a debate, a conversation, a fireside chat. I'm just not equipped to have those conversations. I'm just not. They should be having conversations with someone who has domain-specific expertise and could speak to them intelligently from a position of knowledge. That's not me. So I get that. The thing that I struggle with is, somebody said to me years ago, I did a thing in London, and I think it was Michael Fallon said to me, it came up in this thing with James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose and Mike Nana. Well, you wouldn't talk to Nazis. Or it was Andrew Doyle was there too. Someone said that. I can't remember the exact context. I'm like, sure I would. Why wouldn't I? Of course I would.
So you would
discuss 100%. Yeah, 100%. I talked to the KKK. I talked to a woke person. Can't get them on my show. But I mean, I talk to any of these people, but that's because it's my expertise, like not only the conversation, but moral conversations or complicated conversations. But I wouldn't talk to somebody, it would be totally unproductive, which is the moon of Mars, Deimos. Like I wouldn't have a conversation about how to extract raw materials from a moon of Mars. There'd be no point in me even attempting to have that conversation. So I think one of the things that the left has done very successfully, and it's come at the expense of civility and decency and moving the needle forward on trying to figure out what's true, is they've made a kind of contamination when you speak to someone they don't like. Oh, this person has a bad viewpoint. We don't speak to them. My sincerely held belief, I truly believe in the Enlightenment. I truly believe in conversation. I truly believe in reason. I believe that there is, the Aufklärung narrative. It's not a narrative. It's not the idea that reason can liberate you, and conversation and discourse and the Socratic project. Like, I truly believe that. And we now have a group of people, a very significant number of people, who will excoriate you or label you as a Nazi sympathizer or a platformer if you have conversations with people they disagree with. So it's not only that you have conversations with that person, but then that person becomes tainted because they don't like you. So we have this cascading series of effects in which we're never really allowed to give people the opportunity to figure out what's true or how they're wrong, because we don't have a clash of ideas, and we've lost that. And it seems so fundamental, so constitutive of what makes a society move forward.
I generally absolutely agree in the sense that, all the democratic societies are based on debates and pluralism and tolerance. And what does tolerance mean? It doesn't mean that you tolerate something that you like. It means that you tolerate something that you utterly dislike, and you accept that it has to be given space in the public discourses, that it might have political representation. In Europe, in continental Europe, usually we have more strict regulations on that, also on free speech in most of the countries, including Hungary. The Holocaust denialists, for example, against the criminal code, so it's a criminal act.
See, I'm against that. Christopher Hitchens was against that too.
I don't have a very strong opinion. With the history of Europe, it's easier to understand. Also, I generally agree that, terrorist organizations, I think it's against. Yeah, I think most of the states step up against them, but also, organizations that are so unconstitutional that are posing a strong threat on the state itself for violent purposes, they should be controlled. So I agree with that, but beyond that, I think we have to have more discussions. When it also, I'm a political analyst myself, and also someone who is curious about the opinion of others. So in many background discussions, I just listen, and also I think in background discussions, I tolerate more of a disagreement. On a public debate, I think you also have to be careful to a certain extent to do not, pull someone into serious discussions who are not serious and
I completely agree.
So if, for example, you're a serious astronomer, you don't sit down with a flat earth theorist because it would just, I think, create the impression of this false symmetry.
Richard Dawkins said that as well.
Exactly.
He said that giving an evolutionary biologist who speaks to a creationist is giving it the oxygen of legitimacy.
Exactly.
And I understand that. And I love, and I know this must sound crazy, but it's really true. I love bizarre arguments like the earth is flat, because I think what it helps people do, particularly students, is it helps them make better arguments and
you're absolutely right.
And understand, okay, this is why we know this. We know here. So here's an objection, and here's why we know it's false. Now, maybe it could be, wow, well, we thought we knew this, but it's not true. How do we test that? Then we develop the tools to test that. Oh, well, it actually is false. I mean, it's kind of a crazy example, and I caught an insane amount of shit for this. So I used to teach a class, Science and Pseudoscience, at my former university I will not name. And my colleagues gave me an unbelievable amount of shit because I would invite people in like Mark Sargent, the Flat Earth Society guy. I read his book. I had him in. I taught students how to, ask those questions, et cetera. But my point is, it's not that I'm a great guy or anything, but I think
you are.
That well, I don't know about that. I think that the point is that I'm just thinking about I'm caught up in the Holocaust denial thing. Because so this is an interesting story. So Michael Shermer's a very close friend of mine, and heads the Skeptic Society. Yeah. And
he was a guest at one of our Budapest forums, one of our public events.
Yeah, he's great.
Online, he's great.
He's great. He'll have a conversation about anything.
Yeah, and
and when he doesn't know something, he'll say, you know what, I don't know. Let's get an expert in here. Exactly. And he was telling me stories about that. But he told me a story that I thought was so interesting. He might have even told my class when he came into lecture. But somebody said they went to, I think it was Treblinka, and they said that the lock mechanism on the quote-unquote gas chamber, there was no lock. And so Shermer flew down, and he looked at it, and he conducted this pretty extensive investigation. Well, why are there no locks? Turns out that they had changed they took off the lock mechanism for a variety of reasons. But the point being that if you denied any kind of Holocaust, if you said it's not true, or why aren't the lock mechanisms there? Well, we're going to make that illegal. It wouldn't go away. More people would believe it. So not having that law and allowing people like Shermer to go and investigate that moves the conversation forward. It gives people the evidence they need to say, so when some lunatic comes around and says, well, why isn't there a lock here? Well, it's now documented, and he's put out a few papers on this in Skeptic and other places. We now know why there's no lock on the door. So there's something about, prohibiting speech or restricting speech. Now, let me give you, Mamdani is this guy who's running for mayor in New York City. And I think he's a fucking lunatic. Like, he is a bona fide, like, he wants a tax on white neighborhoods, and he's a racist, and he's an actual communist. Anyway, neither here nor there. Some people want to denaturalize him and kick him out of the country. That is insane.
Yeah,
You do not do that in democratic countries. Like if you don't like a guy,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
run a better campaign.
Exactly.
You persuade people why you don't like him.
totally
And if he
agree.
gets in, well, then you deal with it. You don't kick people out of the country who are your political opponents. That's authoritarian madness. Now, you have a right to not let them in. You can not let in anybody you want to your country. But if they've gotten in legally and they're in your country and they followed all the rules and they're running for mayor, even if they have the most deranged platform, the most fucked up thing you can imagine, the response to that is not to throw them out of the country. But that's a kind of deeply disturbing right-wing fascism that I've seen in response to ideas that they don't like. The very people who were at the back end of the culture war 5 years ago, once they see themselves now winning and woke declining, they're picking up a lot of these tactics as well. Now, admittedly, I don't think woke people ever called for throwing people out of the country. In fact, maybe quite the opposite, importing more people they consider to be oppressed. But I do see problematic trends emerging, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about them. I think we've lost some basics of liberalism.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and yeah, that's the bad part of polarization. That finally, what it results is that you selectively want to deprive your opponents of exercise their basic
100%.
political freedoms, and yeah, it results in some kind of moral particularism when you can do
100%.
whatever you want and your camp, but they just can't. And yeah, my bad feeling is that I think there are not so many real genuine defenders of free speech have remained in the Western world. Even the ones who use the term free speech the most are doing the best to silence their political opponents. And that's where I think there needs to be some democratic response from the society itself. And that's why I usually say that, if you live in a highly polarized society, the first thing that you can do is to try to have difficult conversations. Even if, as I told it earlier, I think even difficult conversations, so you can have limits into that. And I think that debate not always have, but the mere principle that get engaged into discussions with people you disagree with. And I think you're right. You also have to learn how to defend your viewpoints. Yeah, having a conversation with someone who has very good arguments that are against your worldview, can be sometimes quite uncomfortable.
You could always be wrong.
Yeah, and you can be wrong, but you have to challenge yourself as well. I mean, if you just close I think it's like this is the fanatic mindset. If you close yourself into your ideological cliches and do not let them challenge. When it comes to Holocaust denial and when it comes to talking to Nazis, I think in Europe it is a difficult question because we have experienced how Adolf Hitler came to power on mostly, or at least, let's say, semi-democratic elections in the 30s and then destroyed anything that is democratic using this democratic legitimacy. So you can abuse democracy from inside. And that's the experience that I think creates an ambivalence in many sense. And I also don't think, honestly, that, for example, banning Holocaust denial will just solve the problems. If you talk to Jewish communities, you do not necessarily hear anyone who would disagree. And, I don't say that the victims are always right, but I do think that we have to listen to the voice of the victims as well sometimes.
Okay. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
I may be a bit better in responding questions than asking them. So I don't know anything.
Okay.
Nothing comes to my mind.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the conversation. I really hope that we can continue it at some points. Yeah.
The story of how we met is interesting. Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So we met
at MCC.
At MCC, and so Balázs Orbán, he said to me, I want you to talk to people who hate the government. And you remember this? And I said, yeah, sure. And I can't remember what you were doing. And he suggested I talk to you. So he suggested to me that I talk to you. And I can't remember how it came about, but you were at MCC campus.
Yeah, I just visited you then. And also what I have to add here is that I was a great fan of your work on pseudoscience. We have written a book with a friend and colleague of mine on pseudoscience, Nora Faina, and also I have been dealing with this topic, and I was familiar to your work, so I was also sieging MCC that please establish a conversation between you and me, because I wanted to see you. But yeah, I was quite happy that they have been very open.
Yeah,
to
I
that.
was
and also,
like astonished by that. Like I was just like, I could not imagine that happening. The United States, I agree with you, is so polarized. Oh, which is one thing I want to add. Like, you know what I think contributes to this problem of polarization? And I'm not saying debates don't have a place. I really do think they have a place. But I think right now we don't need any more debates. I think what we need is conversations and fireside chats where people don't hunker down and like, I'm going to win this and I'm not going to change my mind.
Absolutely right.
I think we need that.
Absolutely right.
And
Background
I think
discussions, yes.
Yeah, we need more like, oh, well, why do you think that? Or, oh, what would it take you to change your mind? Or, oh, what is your evidence for that? And I think I really believe this when I'm about to tell you. I think by and large, the left has created a problem where they will not talk to people who challenge their ideas. And it's not just me trying to have these people on. It's a whole range of people. I think the right is guilty of a different kind of craziness, like throwing people out of the country just like really bad shit. But I think if at core, if we want to live better lives and have better societies, we just have to start talking to each other. Too bad nobody wrote a book about how to have impossible conversations. Boy, that would really help us right about now. It would really be great. Okay, so where can people find your work?
They can follow me on Twitter, for example, at Péter Krekó. Also, I'm publishing some commentary and articles, sometimes in Anglo-Saxon press as well. I give comments sometimes to Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. Also, I write op-eds. I don't have that much time for that, and I have a lot of academic work to follow. Not sure that everyone will be interested, but if you are, then on ResearchGate, for example, you can find me, and also on my Twitter and on Google Scholar as well. So I'm doing.
You're out there.
I'm doing research mostly on issues related to disinformation, foreign policy, conspiracy theories, populism, pseudoscience. So if interested, please follow me. And happy to have any feedbacks to this discussion, even from the ones who fundamentally disagree with me.
Thanks. And full disclosure, we've become friends over the years, and we know each other quite well. We just had dinner a little while ago.
And thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.